Welcome back to A Shark's Perspective. So, would a well-trained spy be able to meet his sales or lead generation quota? Interesting question, right? But how simple a thing like the art of persuasion can be for helping both business people and spies exude influence in order to be successful. But where, unless you work for the federal government, can you learn those types of skills with their type of training? Jason Hanson is a former CIA officer, the founder of Spy Escape and Invasion, a successful alumnus of the hit TV show Shark Tank, where he won an investment from Daymond John, and the best-selling author of Agent of Influence, How to Use Spy Skills to Persuade Anyone, Sell Anything, and Build a Successful Business. And on this episode, we'll discuss life as a CIA operative, persuasion, and how it applies to being successful both as a spy and in the business world, appearing on Shark Tank and working with Daymond John, Jason Bourne, James Bond, having a phone a friend on my international trips, and a lot more. So let's tune in to a spypreneur with the deep cover operative known as codename Shark on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Jason, thank you so much for joining us today on A Shark's Perspective. If you would, tell us a little bit about your background and your career to date.
I am a former CIA officer, so I was with the agency from 2003 to 2010. I left the agency in 2010 to start my own security company called Spy Escape and Invasion. And now I run a survival company, a marketing company. So that's kind of the gist of me in 30 seconds.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for your service to this country. I'm always somebody who thanks military, police, fire, and others who serve this country, but also want to thank the men and women who serve in other roles, especially like the CIA, and how much you and everybody else has helped protect the greatest place on earth. Second of all, and now that we've met, I also have you as my phone a friend in case I'm ever overseas in a precarious position. But I've got a lot of questions. Is Jason your real name, or are you just a deep cover op for this podcast?
No, that is my real name. No cover names for this one.
I'm sure you get plenty of spy dad jokes, which I'll try to not pepper in too much. But let's start off a little bit about where I first saw you, which was I believe 2014, the year for you when you appeared on Shark Tank. And real curious what that experience was like as somebody who was coming in to pitch a business on TV, to 5 gazillionaires.
It was a wonderful experience. I mean, before my company did a lot of consulting, and I was the guy you snuck in the back door. So corporations would hire us. And when they had problems, they'd sneak me in the back door. I'd have to sign a mile-long confidentiality agreement. And, I wasn't out to the masses. And then went on Shark Tank, was able to get a deal with Daymond John. It was a very good appearance for me. And that's what opened us up to the masses. So that's, instead of just working with corporations, we're now training celebrities, high net worth individuals, pretty much everyday Americans also. So it worked out great.
Amazing. And I love as well that CNBC is showing the show over and over and over. So I know I've seen it come up on CNBC as well. Was it because of Shark Tank and the business knowledge you gained since you started the Escape and Invasion company? Was it because of that knowledge that you got working from Daymond John that made you realize I can apply what I know to sales? Or sort of what launched your CIA op to sales and marketing career?
Well, I mean, that was right off the bat. That was the day I left the agency and I had to figure out how to run a company and grow a company. One of my favorite quotes is by a fellow CIA officer, and she basically said, "Spies are the world's best salesmen. The only difference is you sell vacuums, we sell treason." So when you're, spy world, of course, has James Bond shooting guns, driving Ferraris down European roads. But in the real world, it's all about persuasion. So if you're trying to recruit somebody to spy on behalf of the United States of America and have them commit treason against their own country, which of course can lead to prison and death, you've got to be darn good at what you do. So the same persuasion skills that are used at the agency are also used in business. The only difference is the stakes are a lot less dangerous in the business world. I mean, if you screw up in business, you might lose a deal. If you screw up in the spy world, you could end up dead.
Yeah, and I picked up a copy of your book, Agent of Influence, How to Use Spy Skills to Persuade Anyone, Sell Anything, and Build a Successful Business. As I told you earlier, I was in Barnes & Noble and just happened to see it in the sales and marketing area. And I'm a voracious reader, and I found it there somewhere in the business section. When I found it there, it was really catnip to two things. one, I love watching movies about, and two, I love reading about. This is really kind of like combining a Tom Peterson sales book and a Robert Ludlum spy book all in one. So you get kind of a twofer for that. What inspired you to write the book?
I love business. I mean, I didn't have a business background. As I said, I left the CIA. I wanted to start my own company. And then I realized, shoot, I better figure out how to run a business and do marketing and so on. And I really enjoy it. I mean, the spy world has its own thrills, but being an entrepreneur and having to make sure you provide for your family and put food on your table also has its own thrills and pressure associated with it. So I've been fortunate to build more than one multi-million-dollar company, and I put everything together in the book to hopefully help others do the same.
Well, unpack a little bit, if you will, just sort of at a high level, what the SADR process is.
Sure. So if you were a spy and you're going over to, let's just say, Russia, and you're trying to recruit somebody from Russia to work for the US, you're going to use the SADR cycle, and it stands for spotting, assessing, developing, and recruiting. And, it's a very in-depth process, but spotting means who has the information that we have. Assessing means making sure you check them out, doing your due diligence, so you find out if, in fact, they do have what you need. Then you go to developing, and that means you're making them fall in love with you. You're becoming their best friend. And so you go spotting, assessing, developing, and recruiting is the day that comes where, hey, Boris, I'm not really an American businessman. I work for the CIA. How would you like to work for us? Again, it's much more in depth and intricate than that. But it's the recruitment cycle, and it's also the sales cycle because you're selling someone. So it's the same cycle I've used in business to do many, many details and, again, build a successful company.
So, as somebody, I mean, you're basically picking apart at such a tremendous level human behavior. You're just an amazing student of the skills that you learned as a CIA operative, I'm sure, and how those skills have taught you to become an incredible student and practitioner of human behavior skills. When do you find that doesn't help you? I'm trying to find a situation where that doesn't help you. It's kind of like situational awareness, where you start, looking at everything around you. You probably see a person, and more than most people, you're able to read them like a book up and down, not just by body behavior, but in a lot of different ways that most people aren't necessarily able to use. What I'm always trying to figure out is if you're in sales and you're face to face with somebody that's fantastic, but if you're not face to face with somebody, how do you apply those skills that you're using just dealing with a normal business practitioner? You have such an unfair advantage, not from anything shady, from such a wonderful skill set that not enough people get the opportunity to learn.
Well, I think it all comes down to you can take any skill set and use it for good or use it for evil. So if you're out manipulating people, conning people, and causing them harm, well, then clearly you're not a good guy and you should end up in jail or wherever you deserve. But if you're selling a product that's a quality product that you believe in, that will help people, then you should do everything in your power to get it in their hands. Mm-hmm. So when I'm dealing with people, and one of my companies is marketing, helping people grow their business. Another company is a survival business. But if I'm pitching my marketing company and I guarantee and I know that I can double someone's business based on what I've seen, then I'm going to do everything I can to persuade them because I know it only helps them. So I don't worry about it at all because I know I'm not going to do anything which isn't going to help another person.
Yeah. So what are some of the common tips that you see a salesperson should learn? What are they going to get out of this book that'll help them apply themselves to become better salespeople?
Well, it'll tell them how to do deep research. It'll tell them how to read body language, how to mirror someone, but without being corny, like they teach you in a lot of books, so it's obvious. Right. It will teach you the hourglass conversation, which is a great way to extract information. It will teach you some lie detection skills. So you need to be able to become a human lie detector. That way you can read people so you know if they're telling you the truth and you're actually going to close this deal, or if they're just lying to you and you're wasting your time. What I did is I took how I built a multi-million-dollar company, put it all on paper so that other people can see it, and it's not any kind of mystery.
Well, obviously, without going into too much detail on the methods, but when you talk about the art of elicitation and just being able to make them have a conversation with someone, how does the CIA go about helping teach and train you to be able to do that?
Well, one of the important things is to give to get, meaning share information about yourself first. So many salesmen come off canned. They're reading a script. They're like, okay, so tell me, what do you need? And they're asking you question after question. But again, it doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel authentic. So your guard is up. But if I'm trying to sell somebody, I might tell them, hey, I've got 5 kids. I drive a Suburban. I live in a small town. I'm going to tell them things, give them information about myself so that they feel comfortable to open up to me. And if I say, oh, yeah, I got to take one of my kids to soccer practice, they may say, oh, I've got, kids too. How many do you have? Well, I've got 5. Well, I've got 7. Oh, I've got 3 or whatever. So by giving information about yourself and being authentic, people are going to open up and start giving to you. So that's the whole give to get methodology.
Well, elaborate, if you will, then on one of the areas that I really like, which was page 86, building alliances, not contacts. I think that's, again, another area that people miss way too often. But I would love if you would elaborate a little bit on what you mean by that.
Well, what I mean by that is I always play the long game. In both of my businesses, it's never about making a quick buck or making a quick deal. So I want to be working with this person 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, playing the long game. And so I'm working with people and I'm trying to help them, and I'm always doing what's best for them. And if it's not me, I'll tell them. If I say, hey, I looked at your information and I am not the guy you want to hire because it would be it would not be right at this moment. But hey, I know somebody who would make sense for you this time. I'll happily pass them along. So I'm at a stage in my business where I'm fortunate that everything is doing well. I'm not homeless, desperate for money. So I can pick and choose who I want to work with, and I can be 100% honest and say, you know what, I don't need this $25,000 deal from you. It's not right. You're not at a good place in your business. Go to this person instead. So that's kind of the most important thing, is playing the long game.
So a lot of the people that come to you today, you've got the separate businesses, but do you see more growth out of the SPY knowledge business or more growth out of the sales and marketing side of the business? Or do they basically just converge together?
Yeah. It's kind of, I was just going to say, it's one happy family merged together. I mean,
yeah.
My survival business, admittedly, I spend more time on. So I am, out teaching rifle and pistol and escape and evasion and evasive driving. And, that one again, is not eats, but uses more of my time. The consulting business is more by referral, or people reach out to me out of the blue, and, I pick and choose to work with. So I enjoy them both, but the survival business definitely is the one that I'm spending more time on.
Well, you really have a mastermind for sales and spy work on steroids.
That's a good way to put it. I like that.
Yeah. How does the common layperson start going about creating the skills to become better practitioners of your craft? Obviously by the book, but where do they go next?
I'd say one of the big things is that you've got to, I mentioned deep research earlier, is people these days are so lazy. And so I'll get those generic emails that, are clearly copy and paste, like, hey, Jason, we'd love to work with you, or we'd love to have you do this, or joint venture. And I can see they put 0 time. They didn't research me at all. I'll give you an example. I've never sent a text message in my life. And I have a flip phone. I have no desire to ever send a text message. And I put that in my books. I put it in articles. I'm telling it here again. And so I'll get somebody who will say, hey, Jason, can I send you a text for XYZ? Well, clearly you didn't do any research whatsoever.
Right.
So it's easier than ever these days to research a quote unquote target you're going after. When I went on Shark Tank, I read every single book that any of the sharks had ever written.
Absolutely.
I watched every single interview they'd ever done. I watched every episode of Shark Tank, so I knew what questions they ask and that kind of thing. So I knew them better than they knew themselves, and it became very useful when I was in the tank for about 55 minutes. So one of the easiest things that I would encourage people to do, and especially easy these days with the internet, is to do that deep research.
Agreed. Well, the same thing goes. Before I reached out to you, I read this book, and that's what spurred me to do it. As somebody with having the skills that you have, I thought an important chapter that you have is chapter 13. And it's important to any kind of business leader today who's hiring people. With your skills especially, how do you go about filling your team with honest people?
Well, I definitely use lie detection skills. It's crucial. So I have a certain set of questions that I ask everybody, and it doesn't matter if you're a $10 an hour guy working in a warehouse, or you're going to be one of my executives or one of my marketing team. And I'll give you a very simple question: is I ask people presumptive questions such as, "Tell me the last time you stole something." And excuse me. And based on human behavior, I know their reaction, how quickly they answer, if they have a nervous look on their face. Most people will give an honest answer, such as, "Hey, in sixth grade, I stole a candy bar from the supermarket," or "Hey, I stole money out of my parents' wallet in high school." But on more than one occasion, I have had an instance where somebody got the deer in the headlights look. They
Sure.
started stuttering, and I found out they were stealing stuff, recently. So obviously, I didn't hire that person. So I think it's critical this day and age to be able to know lie detection skills. And of course, I run a background check on everybody who works for me.
Sure. Well, it's just so important today. I think so many people are just trying to build culture and they want to grab the right people with the right time with the right skills, but you still got to do your due diligence. I've hired plenty of people. I wish I'd done more things to vet because they always, to your point, I don't care if they're the $10 guy or the $100 an hour guy. The $10 guy can do just as much damage, if not more, in his role if you don't vet him through. So just looking back at your experience on Shark Tank and how that business has grown, how much involvement do you really have with Daymond today? Is he still an investor, or is that still part of the business growth strategy, still working with him?
No, he's not an investor anymore. We kind of had a buyout contract.
Yeah.
But we did work together for a good amount of time, and he was wonderful. I mean, he was very down to earth, super friendly. I could call him when I needed to. I could email him when I needed to. But of course, he's incredibly busy and has a gazillion things going on. But it was a positive experience. I mean, I don't have anything negative. But I know not everybody has the same story, meaning I've heard horror stories of people working with the other sharks where they could never get a hold of them or they never responded to them. But I didn't have that issue.
So I love the fact that you covered later in the book, you give some advice to people as to how to get on the show, just some general tips, not necessarily about Shark Tank, but whether you're pitching yourself to any group of investors or to get on TV to pitch something. What's the general advice you give on how to do that?
Well, one is, you've got to research everybody who's going to be there, research all the judges. You got to know them. You got to know what they're going to ask. But two is you've really got to have that wow factor. Like, what is so amazing? Their jaws are going to drop when you finish that pitch. And I think that's one of the things, you go to your mom and dad or cousins who tell you it's great, but go ask the guy at the local bar or restaurant and get his reaction. So you need to get out of your immediate sphere of influence and talk to strangers who are going to give you an honest answer. And then, of course, how are you going to scale the business? I mean, recently I was asked by our local university to be on a judge, and they had a quote unquote Shark Tank competition. Mm-hmm. And you could just tell some of these people had first, they hadn't done any preparation. They had no idea how they were going to scale their business. They didn't know their numbers. And you have to do a tremendous amount of preparation if you're going to pitch to anybody. It's plain and simple. Hard work is the key.
Well, and I love the fact that you even wrote a chapter as well right after that, or a section on here on how to dominate your first television appearance and then get asked back for a second or another appearance. What was the point of doing that? Because it's a normally great follow-up topic, but what made you think of writing something about getting asked back for another appearance?
Well, yeah, I mean, PR is huge. PR is huge these days, and I've been fortunate to be on over 50 television shows. And when you go on a television show, it's hard work, just like sales, getting that first sales. So once you're there, why not get more sales? For example, I've been on the Rachel Ray Show, which is a national TV show, over 9 times.
Wow.
And that's because, first, I'm very professional when I go on. I do a good job, and I've built a relationship with the producers so they know that, hey, we can count on Jason. He's not going to be a knucklehead when he comes on, and I give him quality content and information. So anytime I do some kind of TV appearance, before I leave, I'm saying, hey, here's another idea I have, which could really benefit your listeners or your readers or your viewers, depending on if it's TV or radio. And because people these days are desperate for good content, if you do a good job, they'll be more than happy to have you back.
Absolutely. And I think the part that I loved about it was because so many people, especially in sales and marketing and communications, think that once they get a little bit of PR, they think their job is done. And I've told people before, make sure that you deliver quality so that you get invited back. But most people sort of think of it with a shorter term strategy. We've had our 3 minutes on air, and that's going to light up the phones, and it won't. It's more of a consistent long game instead of just quick hits and PR. Where do you want to see the business go as you evolve with your business? And you've already gone through a buyout with Daymond's portion. Where do you want to see your business grow in the future, and where you can help companies the most?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me personally, I'm more at a lifestyle stage these days.
Right.
So as I mentioned, I've got 5 children. I got married after I left the agency, so they're very young. So I am more about being able to work from home, not be on the
Yeah.
road a gazillion times a year. So I'm being very picky and choosy of what I take on these days and turning down a lot. But that's because I was on the road so much in the past, and I don't want to travel as much these days. So these, again, what I want to do is just work with great people or great companies. I mean, I only want to work for the best of the best, whereas years ago, I may have worked with someone who, I thought I could help, but was not quite there. But I thought, hey, this guy is, very energetic. I'll help him. These days, I'm more ruthless about you've got to have a certain amount of sales, or you've got to have a certain amount of, income in your business before I'll even consider working with you. So it's becoming pickier, which benefits me and the companies that I can help more.
So when you look back on your own career as a CIA operative, I'm sure you get questions all the time, but what can you talk about as far as that experience and how it went in your life?
It was a great experience. I mean, the agency treats you very well. The people are amazing. I mean, the men and women who are protecting this country, hats off to them. And the only reason I left is it's a single man's game. So I had mentors who were much older than me, but they were divorced or they didn't, have good marriages or good relationships with their children. And so I kind of saw my future and said, hey, I do want to get married and have kids one day. And I would like to have my own business one day. So it was more of a lifestyle choice for me. But again, it's great. The agency gets a bad rap sometimes, but they're doing incredible things protecting this country.
I could not agree more. It's funny. Everything about the single man's game or the single person's game is the reason why somebody would necessarily leave being a CIA operative. But good for you for knowing what you wanted. So, Jason, I've got to ask this question. You're not going to see any of these in Salt Lake, or you'll probably see them closer to home in Virginia or California. But what is your favorite kind of shark and why? You're on a shark's perspective.
Jeez, favorite cut. The problem is I'm no shark expert, so I'll say hammerhead shark. Those are interesting looking.
Well, you could have gone with Daymond, so that was acceptable. Jason, it's that special time of the show. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions that you're going to be asked today?
I'm ready.
All right, number 1, and this goes back to your Shark Tank episode. Duct tape or zip ties?
Duct tape, more uses.
People need to watch that episode again. Number 2, being an entrepreneur or being a CIA agent?
Both.
Well, you got to pick one or the other.
Oh, man, that's tough. Well, I'm going to say entrepreneur because that's the life I'm living right now.
There you go. Number 3, obviously your first choice would be Daymond John, but second choice, Barbara Corcoran or Mr. Wonderful Kevin O'Leary?
Barbara Corcoran.
Nice. Number 4, Jack Ryan or Jason Bourne?
Jason Bourne, definitely.
Yeah, I kind of knew you'd go with that because I saw the Robert Ludlum quote at the front of the book. And number 5, and the most important question that you're going to be asked today, and I was doing my research, biscuits or cornbread?
Biscuits. Ooh, yeah, biscuits.
Good man. All right, Jason, where can people find out more about you, your company, grab a copy of the book, and more?
So the book is available on Amazon, Agent of Influence, and then my website is spyescape.com.
And you post a lot of blog content on there, which is great, which I've been reading quite a lot of it, and it's catnip. It's fantastic stuff. So, Jason, again, thank you so much. 1, for your service to the country, and thank you so much for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So there was my conversation with Jason Hanson, a former CIA operative, the founder of Spy Escape and Invasion, a successful alumnus of the hit TV show Shark Tank, where he won an investment from Daymond John, and the best-selling author of Agent of Influence, How to Use Spy Skills to Persuade Anyone, Sell Anything, and Build a Successful Business. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversation with him. First, isn't it amazing that a skill as simple as persuasion can be something that helps you excel in business and as an operative for the CIA if you learn how to use those skills properly? Obviously, there's so much more to it, but it still shows the value. And so many sales, in quotes, experts talk about their gifts of this, but as Jason said, the stakes are a lot less dangerous in the business world than the spy world. Second, do research and prepare. It is constantly remarkable to me how little is done in sales and marketing by practitioners who do no research beforehand whatsoever. They simply cookie cutter approach everything with a cut and paste mentality, and I could not agree with Jason more. Do your research. And that goes even for somebody who's been on TV on a national show like Shark Tank. He did research on every one of the sharks, and he gives advice as to when you're going to appear on a TV show to make certain to prepare that you bring value so that you'll be brought back a second, a third, a fourth time. Third, whether it's the CIA, FBI, police, military, fire, or any other, thank you to the men and women who bravely serve this country and who defend the people who live in it. It's just important to me to say thank you for your service. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you for the privilege of your time. And as Robert Ludlum once wrote in The Bourne Identity, wealth is relative to the amount of time one has to enjoy it. So come enjoy some time with me and join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.